Hey everybody, welcome to our show today. It is November 11th. Happy Veterans Day. Especially thankful to those of you who served our country and wrote that blank check saying, I will give myself in service to the United States of America. Happy Veterans Day to you. We are here on our Behind the Pulpit podcast. I'm here with my colleague. Why don't you introduce yourself over there, my friend?
I forgot my name. What's... Bob Urbig, one of the pastors here at Millington. Happy to join you, Pastor Dave, as per our usual arrangement.
Very good. You have all black today, man. Are you mourning something?
No, I just look good in black.
All right.
It's very slimming. You were asking me if I lost weight. It's because I wear a black shirt.
Bob has been looking lean and mean lately, and it's just amazing. But we are here with our special guest, and we love to have her on. And whenever she can make time for us, we're open invitation. But we are here with our pianist and our wonderful church member, but perhaps your claim to fame is that why don't you introduce yourself? Tell us about your title and who you are.
Sure. Thanks for having me. I'm Aimee Huber, and I serve as the Executive Director of First Choice Women's Resource Centers and have been at Millington Baptist Church since I was 10 years old.
Oh, my.
I know. It's a long time, right?
You've seen a lot of election cycles over your time here at Millington
I make
Baptist
no
Church.
assumptions about your age, Aimee. It could be a long time. It could be a short time. We don't know.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
And I think we wanted to go straight into our In the News segment today, and here's what's going on. Hey, we finally made it through, Pastor Bob. We've been talking about this big election for months and months and months, and last Tuesday we didn't know if we were going to even have an answer to the question of who is...
There was an election?
Really? There really was. Yeah, it happened. And
no, seriously. Yeah, I hope you got a chance to vote, and it certainly was quite the evening. But yeah, we did get the answer a little sooner than we thought we might have.
Right. So,
although out west they're still counting votes, I don't. It's a week later. I'm not sure why they can't count out in California, but
right. So maybe next week the final numbers will be in.
Next month, by Christmas.
But this is a big news story, and it was largely what they're calling a red wave across the country. And I wonder if we could think about this from a Christian worldview perspective. So. Let's have some election reflections from the three of us. Let's just kind of process what happened. So, what you kick it off, Bob. Tell us
maybe go with the red wave idea. There was a map that the New York Times put out where they put these arrows in there to indicate the shifts in different counties, and nearly the entire country, even the states that voted blue, had a rightward shift in their voting. Even New Jersey. I mean, New Jersey, back in 2020, Joe Biden won by 16 points, and this time Kamala Harris won by 5 points. That's an 11-point shift to the right. And then we certainly weren't the only place.
Fairly significant.
So that's just an observation. Why did that happen?
Is New Jersey a swing state now?
I saw some articles that said New Jersey could be a swing state. We have a gubernatorial election next year. We'll see. We'll find out. The first observation I would say, and I've been waiting all week to point this out, I saw on social media tons and tons of posts about the Amish voting, that the Amish were rising up. There was Lord of the Rings memes comparing them to the Ents. The Ents are going.
I love it. Ancient foes coming out of the woods.
It was, and in Pennsylvania, I think they made a big difference. Now, I heard, I didn't confirm this, but I heard from somewhere that there was some government overreach into the farming community, and that was an animating issue for them. So that was one of the reasons that they were engaging in the election. Among other things, I'm sure, but that was one thing that got brought up. But the Amish voted in Pennsylvania and perhaps other places. So that was quite interesting.
Well, I'll chime in with some reflections, but I do want to ask Aimee some questions about her field of expertise. Yeah. But I think a lot of times if there's an incumbent that's not having a great economy, it's really hard to have that particular administration get reelected. So there's the old expression, it's the economy, stupid. So it's not just the price of eggs, though. It's really hard for first-time home buyers to buy homes with these particular interest rates. It's really hard to get a car. The economy is struggling. So I think people were speaking out about that.
But there was a narrative within the news that the economy is doing great, and yet on the ground, people were saying, it's not. I'm not buying it. Like at bread and butter issues,
right.
We're struggling.
Right. I do think Americans want things to be fair, and I'll say this sort of gently here, but the thing about Biden's mental health and how that was supposed to be fine, and then we found out in the last minute this summer, oh wait, actually he's not fine, and we're just going to pluck him out, and we're going to put somebody else in without a primary. That didn't feel right, I think, to a lot of Americans. That was like, that doesn't seem like the way we play here. And I do think there was a little bit of a reaction against that. I don't know how you feel about that.
There was certainly some iconic images to this campaign. So that was one, this unprecedented of a sitting president had a bad debate, and then he's just gone. And somebody else who got no votes in a primary is in, despite what was said.
Right.
And then you had all this stuff about the assassination images with Trump, and then the McDonald's thing and the garbage truck thing and these commentaries. I saw somebody with all these iconic pictures from this campaign that said there's never going to be another campaign like this. It was something else, Pastor Dave.
Yeah.
It was quite the summer.
But I want to bring our friend in here because I need some help thinking about the life issue. This is really important to me. I really care about this issue. I'm just unashamedly pro-life. And I'm confused, Aimee. So I'm just going to hand you the microphone and say, how should we be thinking about this situation and the life issue right now in the current state of affairs? How are you thinking about it?
Very good question. I was nervous about this election. I was really nervous. If Kamala Harris won, I was nervous from a pro-life standpoint because what it would mean for pregnancy centers, what it would mean for pro-life citizens. And so I think I'm one of many who are glad that the election is over, that we have a person, and that person was not elected just by squeaking by, that it was a clear consensus. And I would argue that Kamala Harris's signature issue in her campaign was abortion and abortion rights and reproductive rights, not just abortion being okay, but abortion being celebrated and reproductive rights for women being necessary. And so that was different for a
If there's one thing we were sure
I thought.
about, she was for that.
She
even if we were
certainly
unclear
was.
about other things.
I mean, even in her concession speech, that was one of two issues that was mentioned specifically. So a lot of people cared about that issue, but I think that it was underestimated that people would vote for those abortion rights, and I don't think they did. I think the economy and immigration trumped, for lack of a better word, the abortion rights that the Democrats really pushed. So that was interesting to me.
Very interesting. And you have a unique interest in this particular issue, and Christians have to triage what are their most important issues and how are they going to vote. So I know that this was like front and center for you, and you had done your research and sort of background about not just this election cycle and the way that Kamala Harris was talking about this, but in her career in times past, how she had interacted on this issue. And you were sharing with me about at least one particular case that you're aware of. I don't know if a lot of our audience is familiar with that. Maybe you could share.
Sure.
What's some of the background that helped you come to your decision about that?
Sure, absolutely. So many years ago, there was a situation in California with the pregnancy centers there. And California pregnancy centers have really been under fire for as long as I've been in pregnancy center ministry. They've really dealt with a whole lot. And one of the things they dealt with was the government telling them that they had to advertise that they don't perform abortions. So it's like asking Home Depot to advertise the fact that they don't sell women's clothing. Like, why are pregnancy centers being required to advertise what they don't provide rather than what they do provide? And the attorney general that was requiring that of the pregnancy centers was Kamala Harris in California. And so that
I don't think a lot of people knew about that. But then eventually
No.
she left that position and the
she
case was
left
taken
that
over.
position, and the pregnancy center stood up, and the case went up to the Supreme Court, and it was named NIFLA, National Institute of Family Life Advocates, versus Becerra, because he became the Attorney General.
Got it.
And the pregnancy centers won. It was a victory. I think it was 6 years ago in 2018. And so there's been history against pregnancy centers with Vice President Harris, unfortunately, and that certainly informed my vote.
Yeah. So here's what I want to pose this to both of you guys, okay? Because I'm struggling with where do I go as a pro-life person right now, because it seems like the Republican platform let go of this issue. And that was really disappointing to me. So I'll just take a jab at the red side a little bit. I didn't like that. I think that's an important issue, and it felt like they were trying to appeal to women voters and jettisoning an issue that was really important. That was hard. But yet, even though they got rid of that, they still won. So those people who are pro-life, a lot of evangelicals, they still voted red, despite the fact that that issue was discarded from their platform. So I'm wondering, like, where do we go from there? How do we ever get it back in if they won without it? Why would they choose to do that? Okay, and then the flip side of the coin is, okay, so like the Democrats really ran on this women's rights issue. So it was front and center. Women get out to vote because of women's right to choose, and they lost. So riddle me this, guys. I don't understand. So on the one side, it's like our country votes in a particular party without much decision-making power around the issue, and then on the other side, it's not enough to push them over the edge either. So where does the pro-life movement go in a moment like this? We find ourselves in a strange cultural moment. So what do you guys think?
Yeah, well, I would say, and I'll make a couple other observations about this. I was equally annoyed and disappointed at that it seemed like Trump was moderating quite a bit on the issue, and I think he's a practical guy. So he's trying to figure out what are the issues that are going to. I want to take this issue off the table, so I'm not getting attacked on it. I don't think it. I get it, but I don't know that it really helped him. I mean, there was a lot of anybody who was who was pro-abortion to that extent was not going to be voting for him anyway. So I really wished he had, in debates and other places, really called out the horrors of abortion like he did in 2016 with Hillary Clinton, where he actually on stage on a debate described what they do in late-term abortion. I was saying, just go for that. Like, you would animate more of the pro-life base if you had done that. And there was probably he probably lost some votes over that, truthfully. So that was disappointing. But my take on it would be all the people that he's got around him, and he's got a lot of people around him that are not necessarily pro-life, but they are pro-freedom. So in that sense, I think you're going to not see the government going after pro-life people the way that we have seen it currently in a lot of ways. Of course, Aimee knows about that. So there's more freedom on this. I'm not going to bother you. Just kind of stay out of my business. I think there's going to be more of that, and there's also a possibility that there will be more pro-life friendly policies that are put in place. And I don't know, maybe you can speak to that. You were saying that before we jumped on here.
Yeah, thanks, Aimee. Where do we go from here in terms of pro-life movement?
Well, I can expect that we're going to see good things ahead in the new administration. I think that the federal funding of abortion, the money that we provide overseas for abortion, is going to go away.
So talk about that. Maybe people aren't aware of that. So
Sure.
Currently, what's the status on?
Yeah, so there's the Mexico City policy. There's other funding that we give to countries around the world to fund their abortions. And it was taken away when Trump was in his first term, and it was reinstated with President Biden. So I think that's going to go away. I think that his cabinet leaders are going to be more pro-life. I think the Health and Human Services, the FDA, all of the government agencies that have something to do with abortion, I think are going to change. And I think there are going to be judges and justices that are nominated that are more committed to the sanctity of human life than what we've seen. I mean, it's important to realize that the FDA actually weakened all of the safety protocols for women with the abortion pill in 2023. There's just been a lot under the current administration that I think will change.
Yeah.
Can I ask you a follow-up? Okay, so what's going on out there in terms of an argument in favor of this unrestricted abortion legislation? This is hurting women who are in medical emergencies. So there was a case of a woman in Georgia who actually passed away, and people are saying the pro-life movement is kind of the cause of this, that if it wasn't for the kind of restrictions that were put in place recently after Roe v. Wade was overturned and the Dobbs decision, then women wouldn't be put in compromisingly, dangerous situations. So what about that accusation? How should we field those kinds of things? And I want to come across as compassionate as I can towards women who are actually in a medical emergency, because I think we all want women to receive the health care they need and deserve. I don't think we want any woman who's having a miscarriage or an ectopic pregnancy or something not to receive medical care because of some sort of restriction.
Of course.
But this is the argument that's being made. So how do we respond to that and still value life? How do you interact with that?
So I think it's important to remember that our care and concern for the sanctity of human life extends to women in addition to babies, right? It's not babies over women, it's both.
Right.
And that is a full pro-life conviction and belief. And the narrative that pro-abortion supporters have painted, honestly, is full of lies. It is. It's full of holes. There is no...
The frogs, Bob.
Oh, my
goodness. The frogs are coming for you. You have to watch out. Demonic frogs.
I'm sorry. That might have seemed like a really weird left turn comment. If you didn't see
we'll
yesterday's
get to the sermon. Don't worry.
Sorry.
I remember that slide. It applies.
It does. Okay,
it does.
sorry. I cut you off with
it
that.
applies. Not at all.
Yeah.
But there is protection for women in every state, even with states that have pro-life legislation in terms of miscarriage, in terms of ectopic pregnancies. They're not being denied medical care at all in terms of legislation and laws. That's just something that has been concocted, honestly, in the last 2 years since the Dobbs decision. And it's really unfortunate.
So more of a scare tactic?
Of course.
Right. But we can say that as a country, doctors, medical professionals need to get used to these kinds of laws and understand how to interact with them.
Certainly.
So there's some growing pains with it.
Yes, certainly.
But I think rather than accusing pro-life legislation of this, let's remember that it was what actually caused the problem.
Well, let's remember that it was the abortion pill that caused that woman's death.
I think that's a forgotten piece of that entire narrative.
It is. Because deaths by abortion pill are the only thing that are to be reported anymore. It's not any medical complications, because we don't want to show that the abortion pill does harm women.
Really?
Oh, yeah.
Aimee, I'm devastated by this. I remember you had Abby Johnson speaking at the banquet a couple years ago. Was that 2 banquets ago, 3 banquets ago?
Yeah.
And she was talking about the rise of the increase in usage of pills, and that was three years ago, but I'm sure it's only been growing since then.
Yes.
And how dangerous it is for women.
Yes, we've given women the ability to do their own abortion in their bathroom, completely separated from any kind of medical professional. It's amazing. It's horrific that in the United States in 2024, this is what we're doing? Really?
But rather than be aghast at that,
right,
we're sort of letting the tail wag the dog here and say, "Oh, no, the problem is that we can't, intervene after these pills do their damage," which to me doesn't quite follow.
Right.
Logically, we're not really focused on the problem. I'm sorry. So, I just wanted to pull that a little. Thank you for the clarification there.
Absolutely.
So, Bob,
I want to make a couple other adjacent observations. So there was, if you look at the, and there's a lot of things, the data that we got from how people voted. But the thing I think that's most related to this is those that are under 30. Shout out to Tim over there. So the young men and the young women vote. And this was a big deal. Who was going to come out and who was going to vote? Donald Trump went on Joe Rogan, and Joe Rogan then endorsed him, and a lot of young men watched Joe Rogan. And Kamala Harris went on the Call Her Daddy podcast, which is and was emphasizing the abortion issue there. And it turned out that a majority of, young men voted for Trump, and a majority of young women voted for him. And there is a narrative out there about this fundamental human right of being able to have an abortion. And my thought going away from that is just what do we need to do as a church to make abortion unthinkable for the next generation? Mm-hmm. Is this a cultural discipleship issue? Are we not teaching about this enough? Because the fact that this could be the most important issue to somebody, and if you go on social media and see so many people out there crying that now this right's going to go away, which of course now it's in the states, mm-hmm. so the battle now is at a state issue. I think before we should be promoting legislation that restricts that, but also we need to be making this like this needs to be the will of the people. Yes. This needs to be something that people want, that we want restrictions,
yes,
rather than being something we fight against.
Well, I think John Stonestreet, I don't know if he got this from somebody, is always saying that politics is downstream from culture and culture is downstream from religion. So it's religion that's upstream that needs to inform and train our people about the value of life. So that falls back on us. Yeah. We haven't made a compelling case from the Christian worldview of, hey, let's care about this in a way that makes sense, cares for women, but is compelling. I think that's a great gap of visioneering that we need to be doing as the church.
And she wouldn't have been advocating that if polls were not saying this was a winning issue amongst a certain group of people, especially younger people.
Really quick, Bob.
Yeah.
The whole podcast thing is very interesting. There was a lot of people I saw.
The media observations. Get there.
A lot of people. I saw something that this race was really called before, like the whole issue. There were signs of this before even election night. So if you look at the Call Her Daddy episode with Kamala Harris on the Call Her Daddy's channel, it currently right now has under 1 million views. It got 860,000 views. Donald Trump's episode on Joe Rogan has 48 million. JD Vance's has 16 million. So it's really interesting, not just the candidate, but the issue. How, obviously there's more of a male audience watching Joe Rogan and everything, but 48 million to 860,000 in terms of views on what really are two major podcasts. Rogan's a little bigger, but is really striking.
A little bigger.
Just a little bit, but it really is striking.
From a media perspective, it's very interesting how it's being consumed by different generations. And
you can see how there was a limiting of legacy media here. I think legacy media, really lost a lot of credibility in how they conducted the debates and a lot of other things here. And so you saw people going to places like X and like podcasts to get the message out. So I think that's going to be probably a big change going forward.
Can I just interject too and give a shout out to you guys?
Oh.
And the reason I say that is because unfortunately, even so many years after abortion started in this country, there are still a lot of pastors who are unwilling to talk about the sanctity of human life. Mm-hmm. It saddens me. I still have pastors saying, oh no, we don't want to be political. Oh no, we can't touch that issue. Oh no, we might hurt women if we touch it. Oh, friends, come on. By not speaking about it, you're keeping women in shame and in distress who have had abortions, and they're not being restored and they're not being healed because you're keeping it in secret. So one of the reasons why I love Millington and why I love you guys is because you're always standing up for truth, and the sanctity of human life is one of those core convictions. And so it's an appeal to other pastors to say, oh, no, there is a way to handle the abortion issue from the pulpit that honors women and honors life and is important. And please don't shove it under the rug because it's uncomfortable.
That's a good word.
Thank you.
That's a good challenge. Good. So can we talk about the generational divide?
I know you want to bring it up. And then can I just make a slew of other quick observations and then we move on? Yeah.
All right. So there's only one generation that was more than 50% red, and that was Gen X. So a lot of people are like weighing in terms of why. Now I know a lot of other generations had a big impact on the total popular vote, but it was Gen X alone that was more than half. And I think Abigail Schreier weighed in on this on Twitter or something, the author of The Irreversible Damage and and her sort of expertise. She said that's because the Gen X are parents.
Yes.
So it's the parents who are dealing with the ideology in their kids' classrooms. It's the parents our age that are largely shouldering the inflation. Like we're in the most expensive season of our lives.
You're in the season of your life where you're making the most amount of money and you have the most expenses that are coming up.
So it's our kids that we pulled out of the public school classrooms. It's our kids that are maybe on college campuses that are experiencing these riots, and we're not totally sure we're comfortable. And so I just want to give a shout out to the parents. I feel like that.
Yeah.
Was,
that's a good observation. Not only was it economic, immigration, those are animating issues, but the transgender issue. I mean, that animated a lot. That's adjacent to the life issue too. But that has been like this singular issue that has been pushed over the last few years. People said enough. This was a repudiation on that and all the issues that are related to it.
Right.
So,
all right. What are your other slew of observations?
Okay. So. Maybe I did get a lot of them out here. Maybe the last thing I did want to say, I was very concerned about the language that was used in the election. So this whole idea of the culture being divided, well, if you're getting up there and you're calling a candidate Hitler and fascism and all these other things, and I'm sure Trump is not immune to those things as well, but I mean, this was thought to be a winning issue. I'm going to get up there and say, this person is a threat to democracy, and now why would people not want to riot about those things if you really believe that? So I was just very concerned with how we're talking about the issues that are out there, and I would just caution people, like the world is still standing, and yes, I do think you should vote for values that align with the Christian worldview, but this dehumanization of people that's happening is really problematic, and it needs to stop.
So, yeah. Let's talk about that, because I think we're struggling to find unity. I mean, I remember when I was a kid, like I didn't know how people voted, my neighbors and my family and stuff like that. Maybe a couple people in the neighborhood had signs on their lawns, but now with social media, like I know how all of my friends think. And voting used to be much more private. So I go in the little thing with the curtain and I push the button and nobody really knows. Now everybody knows, and it's very divisive. The rhetoric is not great. I don't think Trump helped with that at all. I think his rhetoric is really problematic. But it's becoming to the point where I think we were talking about earlier, I don't know if I want to have Thanksgiving with my family members who maybe voted differently than me, or children canceling their parents, or or the Tim, I think you were saying like couples who were engaged not engaged anymore, or a lot of examples.
I saw some things on the social media, Pastor Dave.
Just putting the relationship on the line because of a political difference.
Well, or there was the story that just came out this week about the FEMA officials overlooking people that had Trump signs on their lawns in the aftermath of the hurricane, which they're gonna investigate that, and that person's been fired. But how could that even be a thinkable thing? Where we're at right now.
I'm sure you guys remember whenever there was a newly elected president, even if it was not the party that you voted for, they would get up the next day and say something like, I know a lot of you did not vote for me, but I promise now to not be the president of my party, but to be the president of the United States of America, and I promise to do my very best to earn your trust over the course of my presidency. That used to be the tenor and the tone of the transition of power. Somewhere along the lines, that feels like it got lost, and I don't think our country's better because of it. So how do we pursue unity with someone who might disagree with us? How do we lead in that way as Christians? Because I think that's important. I'm sure you guys know other people who didn't vote the same as you guys. So how do we pursue that?
Well, I think at the very beginning, I would ask, why did that person vote differently than me? And I have feelings about why I voted the way that I did, but I can understand why people may have not done that. Now, I think those might be misguided, but if I could at least understand where they were coming from and try to persuade them in a loving way, that's one way of doing it.
So understanding, like a posture of curiosity.
Not demonizing. I mean, we're
demonizing.
Right. That person's evil. Well, no, they may disagree. They may be making that decision based on things that are not true. But they're not an evil person.
So just finding out what issues are important to you, what made you come to that conclusion, starting a civil conversation with a posture of curiosity.
How did you come to that conclusion? That's the tactics course that Greg Kokel puts out there.
Right.
And then you can start to get into a conversation.
Then just listening, right? Understanding. I can actually understand why somebody voted differently than me. I feel like I have tried to understand the other side. I had a big disagreement about some issues like life and marriage, and those are really important to me, religious liberty. Mm-hmm. But there's some other issues that were coming up that I think the legitimate points were being made. So I think we can talk about immigration in a way that's compassionate. I don't think we need to be separating families. I think probably there's been an overlooking of some things in Gaza that are very concerning right now. So I can have a posture of curiosity as to why someone feels passionately about issues, right? So just having a conversation. Other tips or other ideas that you guys have to sort of promote unity? Like, we're supposed to be the peacemakers, right? As Christians, as Christ followers, how do we do that?
I think of a couple things. One is to make sure that the people you're in relationship with know that they are more important than the issues, perhaps, as Christians. I also think of the verse that says, as long as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. So there's some things that you're not going to be able to control. And if somebody writes you off, to pursue them, but to realize that at the end of the day, that after you've pursued them and after you've prayed a whole lot, that you've done all you can sometimes. But it's really hard. And we live in more of a divisive culture than ever.
Yeah. I think a lot of the issues that are coming up are very personal issues, and that's partly why things are divided. And I also think that it's a worldview battle. I think people are coming to conclusions based on worldviews that are antithetical to each other. So it does almost feel a lot of times like people are living on a different planet, on certain issues. So it's hard, but I think if we can work at humbly listening and I think it's possible to humbly listen and fiercely debate at the same time, and hopefully see things that understand where people are coming from, I think would be really helpful.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that we need to do as leaders is cast a vision for the kind of unity we're seeking to have. Probably the most polarized time in our country was right after the Civil War. And I saw a quote recently from Lincoln's second inaugural address, which I thought was maybe helpful in terms of guidance. And he said this: "With malice toward none, and with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right, let us strive on to finish the work we're in." So I think that's a good spirit of, hey, let's move forward with a spirit of understanding, curiosity, unity, and let's do our best to try to understand why someone maybe disagreed with us, but not cancel our friends and family members. I think that's a problem. So strive to keep the unity through the bond of peace. All right. Anything else on that before we move on to the next segment?
I think I've said everything I need to say for that segment.
All right, very good. Well, we're on to our legendary. You've heard of a lot of good battles in the past. Bob is ready this time.
We should have music here. You should have like the Rocky or the Superman music or something.
First of all,
if we start getting consistently 500 viewers, we'll start adding more music.
What? Speaking of boxing,
that's a high bar over there, Tim.
Speaking of boxing, are you guys going to watch the fight Friday night between Mike Tyson and Jake Paul?
How much is the pay-per-view?
It's free on Netflix.
I'm watching it
if you have it.
Okay.
So
this is on Friday.
Friday night. Yeah.
All right.
It's pay per your subscription to Netflix.
Yeah. You want to make a prediction there, Pastor Bob? Who do you think? Tyson?
I didn't even know what's happening.
My prediction.
How out of loop
Tim?
I am. I'll go with Mike Tyson because he's the one that I know.
Yeah. Well,
my prediction: staged.
Yeah. I don't know if Mike Tyson knows how to do staged, though. That guy's a killer.
Didn't he bite somebody's ear off?
He did. Yeah, Evander Holyfield.
If it's legit, I gotta go with Tyson. I understand Jake Paul's is younger, but I don't know. I've seen Tyson's in good shape, man.
Doesn't he have tigers in his house?
I don't know.
Back in the day, he had like tigers in his house.
Per the one movie franchise.
Oh.
Amy, do Austin and Drew care about this fight? Is this something in the Huber household?
I would say Drew probably does.
Okay.
I have nothing to add.
Are you
to
and
this
Chloe
topic
like
at
tuned
all.
out completely?
Okay. Do you care?
I don't.
Okay.
Yeah.
There we go.
I'm
But
going
thank you
with
for
Tyson.
asking.
I'm making a prediction right now that he's not going to be able to contain himself.
You say there is a
he's
Celtics
gonna
game on
knock
Friday.
out Jake Paul. Okay. So, Bob, you have a book for us today?
I'm
opening my Amazon app.
Pro-life book. All right. I do have a book. Do you want me to go first?
Yeah.
Okay, so my book in this war today, my contribution to the battle today, is a book called What is Biblical Theology by James Hamilton. He's a professor at Southern Seminary, and I've really been enjoying his overview of the Bible and how things thread together. So the subtitle is A Guide to the Bible, Story, Symbolism, and Patterns. And I have had this book, and I've been meaning to read it for quite some time, and I've really been thoroughly enjoying his overview of the biblical story. I think he puts it in very understandable terms. He's got a larger book, so this is like the layperson's book, and there you go. If you want to understand how the Bible's a great story threads together, this is a great book for that.
Shout out to Jim Hamilton. He's got a great podcast called Bible Talk.
Oh, okay.
Through 9 Marks, and they're basically going through the whole Bible verse by verse, and he brings out a lot of the typology
Wonderful.
and stuff.
Hey, he's the typology guy. He's also got a great book on commentary on Revelation I've been using.
Huh?
Yeah.
So what's with
Just
the
called
cover,
Revelation.
man? I don't understand the cover. The guy has like a book on his face. What is that? He looks like he's
Oh, man, we're coming at other people's books now.
He's
we're just
headless.
we're
Well,
coming-
you know, I'll be honest. I didn't understand the cover. I think it's trying to say, biblical theology. This is for you to understand the Bible in your head. I
isn't
don't know.
that like is this spoof on a notable piece of art? I feel like
It-
like
maybe
Charlie
it-
Chaplin or
maybe
something.
Oh, they just look like Charlie Chaplin. Maybe that's the
I
case.
believe there's a painting somewhere where it's like the man's face is covered by something.
You guys
maybe an
can see it there.
apple,
Yeah.
but
I'll have to look
don't
it
know.
up and see what the artwork was. But anyway, that's what I've been working through this weekend. It's been.
I was
been good.
teaching a class on progressive covenantalism yesterday in adult ed, and there's this cover to their,
there's
their
I
book.
smell a chart coming from that
Hold
class.
on the chart. Hold on the chart. The Kingdom Through Covenant has like a Tower of Babel on the cover, if you're familiar with that. And I'm like, why the Babel cover?
Yeah.
So I asked some, I'm in a social media group with other progressive covenantalists, and they said that it was basically it's the publisher's decision, like the cover, and it's really not.
You get no say.
It's not good etiquette for the author to like speak.
Oh, on the
against-
Kingdom Through Covenant. You're talking about the bat.
It's like a babble, and it doesn't
like kingdoms falling over.
the futility of
Who
trying to
knows?
build other
Yeah.
kingdoms apart from God's covenant.
Okay.
It just seemed out of place. Okay, are you ready for
Okay.
my book? 'Cause
I'm ready.
I'm going for the win today. All right.
oh man, he's
Well,
sending it.
This one-
Amy might be a dark horse. If she wants to throw one in here, she might win.
Yeah,
we'll
you
see.
can think about it if you
I'll
have
bring one next
All
time.
right, so this book is brand new. It just came out on Election Day. Dr. Michael Spiegel took over the chair of the Department of Systematic Theology at Dallas Theological Seminary, and he is two things, a theologian and a patristic scholar.
What is a patristic scholar?
That
That's a big
means
word.
The patristics are the generation of Christians that lived after the apostles. So the patristics are like the early church fathers.
Ooh.
So there is a famous one named Irenaeus and a lot of other patristics that have weighed in on eschatology. So Spiegel's job in this book was to say, what did they believe in the earliest centuries of Christianity about the end times? And so he has compiled together lots and lots and lots of quotes from Irenaeus and Justin Martyr. Bob, you would be interested in this because your particular eschatological position of historic premillennialism is the oldest eschatological
I know.
position.
It's quite old.
Although it wasn't called what you call it.
I know.
It was
It's called chiasm. Chiliastic. Yeah.
So that is going to be what shows up on a lot of these pages. But he wrote, well, this book is like 315 pages. He wrote a lot more, and the publisher said you can't publish a book that's like 500 pages. So they have a companion website with all of these extra PDF chapters that didn't make it into the book. Anyway, I'm working my way through it. It's really brand new. It's big. And I think it's like a different spin on eschatology from more like a church history perspective.
Okay.
There you go, Tim. That's what I got.
So is it offering
Don't
something
forget,
new, or is
there's
just
a free website that comes with it with a lot of extra PDFs. So
He also gave a plug for there's a podcast with a guy here that does this.
that's true.
Oh man.
yeah.
So
There's like a lot of perks and extras. with
Consider
it.
the size, Tim.
this is really difficult for me because what's funny here is that I have
So our
been
not
goal is
that
to get Tim
difficult.
to decide which
No,
book he would
this
rather
is-
buy.
This is difficult for me because Bob, your book, I've been interested in this, and I've been thinking a lot about how like you've seen the diagram of the cross references with all the colors across the Bible, and I have a chronological Bible that I'm slowly going through, and I'm looking for all those and how it all intertwines together. At the same time, I've been finding myself really interested in the Christians that were post-apostles. Like, how were the Christians living? I've been thinking about this a lot after Jesus' ascension. So I want to give this a draw, but I have a lot of reading I have to do. I have a lot of books in my bookshelf. Bob's is shorter. I'm going to give the win to Bob today.
That's what it was going to be. Yes, yes.
You win.
So
maybe Friday night between Tyson and Jake Paul will be a draw. We'll see. Okay, so that's the Great Book War. Thank you guys for that participation. Aimee, you're going to have to buy both books, I guess, and see. You let us know which one you like.
In reality, I would put both of these in my cart. But if I have to pick a winner, I'm going to go with Bob.
All right.
Listen. If you ever want to come up to my office and just borrow it, it's there. Okay, so the next segment is about our
chart sighting. Chart sighting.
All right, let's do chart sighting.
Quick chart sighting. I want to see it.
I mentioned that yesterday we were teaching on the topic.
It's also because I'm very excited about this view.
Are you?
So, yes.
Okay. So this is a view that is a way to put the whole Bible together. So there's typically two views. People think of dispensationalism or covenant theology.
And we've been talking a lot about that because of the eschatological
implications
series,
of each
right?
view. Right.
Yeah.
This is a relatively new scheme that's called progressive covenantalism. And here's a chart. So this is my chart sighting. I worked really hard on all my charts on Saturday afternoon for the Sunday class. I was really proud of this one. So you'll see that the covenants in the Bible are all represented on this chart. And Aimee, I know you're very impressed. You'll see that it's like going somewhere.
Lots of arrows.
And each covenant is getting broader and more significant, and God's plan is unfolding progressively as he builds out these covenants. So the critique of covenant theology is they just have this one covenant of grace that sort of flattens out the covenants, that doesn't do justice to each of them. The critique of dispensationalism is it divides up God's plan to have two plans. He's got one for the Gentiles, one for the Jews. And this is a middle position that says, no, we don't want to flatten out the covenants, but we do want to end up with one people of God. And you can be a premillennialist. Well, this chart is a premillennial chart, but you can also be an amillennialist. You can be a postmillennialist. So it's a very flexible view in terms of how to put the Bible together. And that's my chart for today. Tim, how did I do? My chart.
Listen,
man?
we got 3 colors here. We got. I've seen the one on the bottom before that it's like you took an old chart that you already made and you're like, all right, I'm going to add a new chart.
I just made new.
I'm liking. It looks like all of the. You know what? They're not.
I like how you brought the 2 arrows at the end. The one forever people of God.
The
and the
bottom.
New heavens and the new earth.
The bottom of all of the boxes here. They're not flush. There's some are deeper than.
I know. I messed it up.
That I don't love, but.
What would you?
It's an A-. It's an A-.
Okay,
Let's be real here.
We would give some points off because of that.
If they were all ascending, there's inconsistencies here, and the spaces. Okay, come on, Pastor Dave.
I know
the spaces in between each of the boxes are not.
He was rushed.
A-.
I was so
A-.
rushed. This is actually me after going. I'm not playing with this anymore. I gotta hang out with my family. So I'm getting there. You can see it's going somewhere. All right, that's my chart. You can take it down now, Tim. The people are tuning us out.
The people listening on Spotify and Apple Podcasts are like, what is even going on?
We are catapulting towards the millennium and the new heavens and the new earth. We're going to be getting out of these judgments after you take us to the whore of Babylon this week.
I'm going there. Yeah. Aimee, do you like charts? Is that boring to you? Or?
I do like charts. Probably not charts. Quite as much as you, I gather. But I think your graphic abilities are excellent as a pastor. Honestly, that's my thought.
She's so positive.
That would be my thought.
There we go.
You know, my wife and I have an ongoing marital debate about this, right? Did I tell you about that?
Is Julie not a chart?
No, she doesn't want to see that stuff. She's like, this is not for the sermon, honey. She'll use nice terms, but...
Okay. What did you think of I did find that progressive parallelism chart. What did you think of that?
It was excellent. Okay, well
good,
done.
Good. Well, I didn't make it, but I found it.
Oh, well.
I could have made it, but I didn't want to spend the time doing it. I thought it was fine.
That leads us into our next segment, which is sermon recap. Pastor Bob, you have 60 seconds now to recap Revelation 15 and 16 for us. What happened?
Oh, my goodness. So we've come to the third set of judgments in Revelation 16. So starting in Revelation 6, we have 3 sets of judgments. We got the seals, we got the trumpets, and we finished off with the bowls yesterday after we had this interlude where we met the dragon and the beasts, and then we had a battle there in heaven and a lot of other issues. We finished off with this kind of Song of Moses, and then we got into the bowls. Now the bowl judgments, I think is the completion of the judgments, and so the theme that we talked about in the in the sermon was to talk about the issue of justice. That if you are somebody who's living life and you feel like justice has not been done, the reality is one day God will bring a final justice to this world. He will judge those and their deeds, those that are apart from Him. So that was kind of the main theme. We looked at 3 different sections. First, we looked at how the righteous have a certain response to these judgments. And they respond with song. Secondly, we looked at the war of the wicked, so people that are marked by the beast who don't love Christ will eventually go to war with him, and we started to get into this idea of Armageddon, which we're going to come to in chapter 19, and then we saw the completion of justice with the 7th bowl that we did pour out on stage, Pastor Dave. The bowls were literally poured out in the sermon on Sunday, and ultimately our hope is in Christ, that because of what He did on the cross, the wrath of God has been appeased, and we've been saved, and will be passed over, and we'll be with Him forever. How about that? How did I do?
Good. To the degree that I love charts, to the same degree Bob loves props. It is an equal loving passion. Right, Tim? I mean, it's like basically...
I am convinced Bob is still outraged that his prop did not win Prop of the Year last year. So he's coming hard.
It was very disappointing.
So how did...
kind of like I lost the election for that.
Aimee, were you worried that he was going to spill it on the carpet like me yesterday? I was like, how is this going to protect the stage?
Yeah, I was okay. I've seen worse on a stage, so that was good.
How did you get the water to be like colorful? What's going on there?
Oh, well, I cut my finger and just kind of...
That was real blood?
No, I got the last little bit of the food dye that my wife had in the house.
Let's not be that church.
Wait, Tim, just the commitment. My wife's food dye. Like, he might have got in trouble in his marriage.
It's almost Christmas cookie season.
She came up to me later. She goes, "What'd you do with the food dye?" I'm like,
exactly.
I
it's almost
he's in trouble.
She's like,
that's big.
Then she sent me to ShopRite to get some more.
It's almost. And he went to the store.
It's almost Christmas cookie season. That's a gamble.
It is.
I'm glad you were able to replace it.
You know, they might need a little counseling after this prop effort.
I don't think she didn't understand how low she was on the red dye.
Find the C.
She let me use.
Find a Meet with a Pastor section on the NBC website.
Yes,
I'll direct you to how to meet with Pastor Dave.
So there's a silver bowl, but in the Revelation, it's a golden bowl. Right?
7 golden bowls. I only had 1 bowl. It was silver, so hopefully you weren't confused. I tried to explain that at the beginning.
I think we got the
white
idea.
gold.
Yeah.
White gold.
It was white gold. There you go. Maybe it was white gold. Who knows?
All right.
Tin.
Yeah. All right. Any reflections on the passage from a church member yesterday? You were here. You listened to the message.
I did.
Any thoughts coming to your mind about what the Lord was conveying in Revelation 16? What's your takeaway?
Well, Revelation is a heavy book.
Yeah.
That's my takeaway. And I am impressed that you guys are willing to tackle it, because it really is. But I think the whole book just reminds you of the need to share your faith, the need to trust Christ, because you don't want to be an object of the wrath of God. It's scary.
Right.
So I am looking forward to a couple chapters to come, right, when there's a little bit more good news. And that'll be good.
Yeah, the middle section is what most people shy away from. So chapter 6 to particularly chapter 18 is very dark. A lot of evil and judgments and all of that. So people usually shy away from that. They love to stick with just the chapter 2 and 3 with the 7 churches, or of course the end with the new heavens and the new earth. Right. But yeah, we tackled it. I think it's important. I think one of the main themes in this section is the idea of repentance. That I did like the idea that, having studied it, that I think God slowly and patiently pours out these bowls as this final warning, so that people have a chance to come to Him in repentance. And yet the sad reality is that not all will. That people still do not repent. And I was struck by the that story you brought up, Pastor Dave, that I included from the run-through of Joseph Stalin. I wasn't, if I was aware of that, I had forgotten. But this whole idea that even at the end of this life, he's shaking his fist at heaven, And I'm sure all of us have met people like that even after sharing Christ with people, there's still those that reject God, and that's very sad. And so I think the call of this, if you're a Christian, is to be calling people to repentance, to be pointing them to the beauty and the love of Christ, because you don't want the bowls for them. So that was one of my big takeaways from this section.
Yeah. There's sort of this attitude of, I'd rather reign in hell than serve in heaven, right? Mm-hmm. But I think we would be remiss not to recognize that attitude exists inside of our hearts. Like, we all have that little rebel that lives on the inside that doesn't want God to have his way with us, right? So I think that's a window, but lest we just think this is about those people outside of us, I think it's a good idea for us to go, oh man, that's ugly. Here's God who created me, wants a loving relationship with me, like he's in covenant with me. He's made such an effort. And I'm like, nope, you can't have what I don't want to give you. That's who I am. Okay. So this is why I think people don't understand the value of the fire and brimstone stuff. Repentance is a gift. Mm-hmm. I'm just going to throw it out there. Mm-hmm. It just sounds so like, hey, wear your picket sign, repent, like I'm better than you, condescending. Yeah, and it can come across that way. Mm-hmm. Like, if we're not doing it right, it sure sounds like, what's that church in Kansas? Westboro Baptist. It kind of sounds like that.
Yeah. Is that where they're from? Kansas?
I think, is that where, I'm forgetting. You know who I'm talking about.
I know.
You know the attitude, right? You know the bullhorn guy. You know the attitude,
I know bullhorn guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but, like, the best thing for me is, like, it would be better for me to recognize that all my problems are not all outside of me. It's good for me to recognize I have a problem inside of me, that God in his grace wants me to recognize that and give that up. That is the most freeing, liberating gift God can give me. Now, that sounds so not intuitive, but I think that's the grace of Revelation 16.
Oh no, for sure.
So I don't know.
Agreed. No, I think that it absolutely is there, that God is mercifully patient, with all of us. And even if you're a Christian, I mean, the call is to be in continual repentance. So I asked the question in here somewhere about why don't we repent? And a lot of times it's because, we want to look good. We don't want to look like we have messed up, or there's certain things we don't want to admit.
Okay, that part of the sermon was definitely meddling. Aimee, I don't know how you felt about here, but I'm like, Bob, have you been talking to my wife about this? Like, the way you're describing my defensiveness.
Talking to my wife.
So, yeah, I mean, we don't like it. We don't like to get called out, and all of my bells and whistles of defensiveness, like, come out in full force. And that's just so humanity, right? That's so like, oh, this is Adam's nature inside of me.
Or there's a sense that, like, the kind of the main theme we opened with is this idea that we all have a need and a desire for justice, but usually it's justice for the other person and not for me. Like, I want grace, but I want the other person to get justice. Mm-hmm. And yet God is going to be just for everybody, Thank God that he came and took the justice on our behalf so that we could be saved.
Well, that's my toxicity, right? Like, I can only see it in you.
Yes.
I can't see it. I need God's justice too. I deserve God's justice too. That's what I'm missing. So,
okay, Pastor Dave, what did you think of the frogs? You were making a big deal on the run through about the frogs. So I threw in some Kermit. I threw in some demon frogs for you.
Nicely done.
Yes, Dave was very interested in the demon frogs.
It's so out of left field. I mean, here we are in the middle of the bowls, and all of a sudden there's these demonic frogs. Like, what? Let's read that slower one more time for the people in the back. So there's frogs coming out of people's, like...
Yeah, so Revelation 16, 13, and 14 talks about out of the mouth of the dragon and out of the mouth of the beast and the false prophet, these unclean spirits, they're demonic spirits. Now, what's interesting to me, they go abroad to the kings of the world to assemble them for battle. And I think this is a really interesting apocalyptic image here. And whether you think this is all in the future or you think it's unfolding or whatnot, there is an element of these rulers being deceived to the beast's side, and one day there will be this great battle. So you were challenging me to think about who are the demon frogs today.
Right.
So I think
Somehow you
whether it's
found
going to
TikTok.
intensify in the end, there's demonic work at activity today, and people are being deceived. And the quote that I found, I think this was from Jim Hamilton, was that demons are hard at work constructing the plausibility structure that will convince people to go to war against God.
Whoa. Big words here.
Okay, so
Plausibility
basically
structure,
they're
Tim,
trying to make it make sense
fair.
why you would go to war against God.
How is this plausible?
Right. How does this make sense? And he's deceived a lot of people into thinking that God is my enemy and I'm going to go fight against him. I think that's what this section is starting to get at. And then Jesus in verse 15 comes and says, I'm coming like a thief. Blessed is the one who stays awake and keeps their garments on. Now that's an image that Revelation has used, this whole idea of the white garments, an image. But I think what he's getting at is we have to be ready. Be ready for when Christ comes, and we need to hold the line against these demonic frogs that are coming after us.
Yeah.
You never know when you're going to get a ribbit.
So for me, I've been sort of looking at the preterist view of Revelation, and I was thinking about
where are the frogs in the first century?
There is a demonic spirit that came upon the leaders of Jerusalem.
Okay. Well, of course, the frogs are the image of the Exodus plagues.
Right. So going way back, that's
right.
an Exodus plague.
Yes.
And the bowls resemble a lot of the plagues, even the sores and the hailstones and stuff.
Yeah.
So, do you remember that scene in Exodus when Pharaoh was dealing with the frogs?
Yep.
And then Moses was asking him if he wanted to get rid of them. And then do you remember Pharaoh's answer was tomorrow? That always cracks
just got
me
you.
up. The old expression is one more night with the frogs. Get rid of them. Right now. No, tomorrow. Just tomorrow. I kind of want to wallow in the filth for a little bit more time. I can clean up my act tomorrow,
Yeah.
But the frogs kind of reminded me of the Exodus story.
Yeah.
And now Israel has become Egypt.
Yes. Well, yeah, and the cool thing I think about Revelation that I've been thinking about, which Jim Hamilton pulls out a lot in this book, is this.
Wait. You're not allowed to recommend the book.
Okay.
This is the wrong segment.
But this is a
Tim. Throw the flag.
I'll allow it.
Throw the flag.
I'll allow it. It's the same book he already recommended.
There's so many Exodus
deserve a yellow
images
card or
in
something.
Revelation. It's a new Exodus. We're going through and we're being set free, and ultimately we're on the way to the ultimate promised land, which is the new heavens and the new earth. Jesus is marching us through. In the same way that in the original Exodus, he took the people of Israel out and saved them through the Red Sea and defeated the Egyptians in the Red Sea. So one day the dragon and the beast will be thrown into the abyss, such like the Egyptians were. It's a very similar story for the people of God.
Just to continue, amen and amen. Just to continue, at the end of the Exodus story is the marriage ceremony, where in Exodus 19,
and the Song of Moses.
There's the song, and then Israel becomes his bride,
With the marriage supper of the Lamb,
and we're heading there. So
we're going to get there very soon. We're going to be eating soon, Aimee. Don't worry, the judgments will be done after the prostitute stops riding the dragon this coming week.
Anything else on Revelation 16
read
before
Revelation
we move on?
17, 1-4, just to give you.
You may want to
sense of what's coming.
pre-read this section.
Don't miss next week.
But just batten down the
Fallen
hatches.
is Babylon the Great.
There's some graphic imagery. Put your kids in the nursery.
But then Jesus comes back and he defeats the enemies. But to the war of the wicked, eventually their flesh is eaten in chapter 19. Pastor Dave, you get to do that one too.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, I'll dive into the millennium.
I was watching
Just so you know, chapter 20 has some fire and
yes. Eventually there will be no more tears. There will be no more tears. Yes.
Yeah, but that's not till Christmas.
Yeah.
All right, so
we'll get there. Christmas is coming, Pastor Dave.
Before we get to the theology sprint here, I was watching a sermon one time, and he was going into this this adult subject in the sermon, and then he pauses and he looks around. He's like, "This is why there's children ministry people," and then he keeps preaching.
Yeah.
Do you have a chart for Revelation 7?
This next week is graphic. I'm just going to say there's a lady of the night. I'll put it that way.
And a red dragon.
If you want to hear more about her, you'll come this Sunday.
Okay.
Anything else, Bob?
I think we're good, Pastor.
Okay.
Yes.
So, hey, don't miss next week. Revelation 17 and 18 is the fall of Babylon. The Tale of Two Cities. And the question for you is, like, who's Babylon?
Mm-hmm.
I'm not going to tell you. So you have to come Sunday and find out.
Will you tell us next week?
Yep.
Just not now.
I'll tell you what I think.
All right. There we go.
I have an opinion. It's not worth that much. But if you want to come hear my opinion,
we'll see.
All right, yeah.
Okay. I'm coming.
So, Tim, we're ready to sprint, I think.
So we
do
don't
have some body life stuff.
We
after,
do.
So don't forget about
a big body life one. It's really big. It's huge. So Noah is not in the studio today, but he caught me. And he's like, I have the Theology Sprint. I was like, please, it is your
Noah
job.
inserted himself from a
He
distance.
did. And I think it is very appropriate for today's episode, so I will get right into it. Today's Theology Sprint is, why is abortion sinful?
That's a great question.
That's a great question. I'm
I
glad
mean,
Amy's here to answer
I don't know
that
if you
question.
enjoy sprinting, but this seems like a softball for you. Mm-hmm. Do you feel comfortable with it?
Sure.
All right. We'll give it to Aimee this
Okay,
time.
there we go.
Aimee, take it away.
All right. Well, Scripture tells that we are made in the image of God, and it also talks about in the Old Testament prohibiting the shedding of innocent blood. The vulnerable, the weak are constantly discussed in Scripture about how God cares for them. I can think of nobody more vulnerable or more without a voice than the unborn. All of those things. Psalm 139, 13 through 16, for God, you created my inmost being, you knit me together in my mother's womb. I praise you because I am fearfully and wonderfully made. Your works are wonderful. I know that full well. My frame was not hidden from you when I was woven in the secret place, when I was, what's the other? All the days ordained for me were written in your book before one of them came to be. Like, it talks about unborn life and how it's important to God. And so when we mess with unborn life that's been created in his image, we're messing with him.
That's an excellent answer. So can I ask you a Theology Sprint Part B, Tim?
Of course.
Okay. Is it an unforgivable sin?
Absolutely not.
Speak to that.
I'd love to. There is no sin that's unforgivable. God shed his blood. Jesus shed his blood on the cross for every sin that was committed, that is committed today, that will be committed. And nothing is beyond the mercy and the grace of God. And he can redeem and he can restore anything, including abortion. So anybody who's listening, if you've had one, if you paid for one, if you encouraged one, oh, please know it's a lie of the enemy that would be unforgivable, because God came to redeem and restore, and he came to give abundant life, not just life, but life to the full. And so if you're walking wounded from abortion, please know that God is here, and he comforts and restores, and can actually use your testimony for his good, for his glory, and for your good.
Perfect. I think Aimee is the first person ever to be a guest who took the Theology Sprint, right, Tim? I don't think that we've ever done it that way.
A non-staff member guest, maybe.
Right, non-staff.
No, we've had
guest.
other people that have done
Okay.
it, but
One or
not
two.
as well as Aimee, though. I mean, Aimee just
Oh man, we're gonna have to have those people back to defend themselves.
We got a new contest now.
Well, thanks
The
for
guest-
We've had a
trusting me.
number of missionaries. That
I
have
hope you
done it,
didn't
and
have
they've
too
come
much
in.
anxiety
Yeah,
about that. The Theology Sprint always gives me a lot of
Non-missionary
nerves.
or staff member.
Good job, Aimee. Good answers. I couldn't add anything to that.
Thanks for
Great.
trusting me
There we
with
go.
it.
Wonderful.
When
Thanks for
Noah
being here.
when Noah asked me to do that one, I something I heard recently was the first that I thought was really cool is that I tell people is the first person to recognize who Jesus was actually an unborn baby.
That's right.
I think that's awesome.
John the Baptist.
Very good. All right. Hey, thank you, Aimee. And then just the last thing before we wrap it up. Thanks for being on the show, Aimee. But we do want to have at least one announcement, Tim. I don't know if there's more than
We
one.
have
We
have
could do
three.
so many announcements.
three,
Pastor.
But we have one that needs to get out.
Okay, let's do which ones you got. Okay, this Friday
Whoa!
is our senior lunch. Seniors, we hope that you'll be there. And for all you senior behind the pulpit listeners, it is this
I was
week.
talking with a senior who was very excited about the lunch.
Here it
yesterday.
comes.
Yes,
We're having a special presentation about wildlife, and it's going to be
What kind of
noon.
wildlife, Pastor Dave?
Well, it's bats.
Will there be snakes like serpents there? or-
No, but we're going to learn
not
all
frogs.
about bats.
Will there be frogs?
Not
They should have been
frogs.
frogs.
Just bats.
You guys can volunteer to lead the next senior lunch on your topics, but this one is about bats, and hope you'll come and bring us a dish to share. It's going to be awesome.
Did
this
you
Friday.
suggest were these bats from your house?
Well, I was going to say you have some personal experience, don't you?
I do.
Yeah.
I feel like I should give a testimony this Friday about my own.
Come and
personal-
blow the shofar
Show
to
the
scare them
video
away.
that you sent to Drew.
It's
of
like
the bats?
it's like a pet ownership thing. I had like 20 of them.
A pet bat.
Did Drew show
thought it
you
was
my
11.
video?
He did. He showed me
It's
your
crazy.
video.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So senior lunch this Friday. Don't miss it. You may or may not see a video of bats flying out of my attic.
Wow.
Okay. So Tim, what else?
I'm not going to beat around the bush this time. It is Operation Christmas Child.
Oh, very good.
You
If
look like
happen
you were
to have
going to give the announcement, Tim.
a container that you might want to put
sorry.
some goods in that you ship overseas
Drop
for
it off.
needy children.
Last week.
Sunday.
Yeah, take your
Yes.
box. That reminds me, I got to take my box home today. So don't let me leave without a box, Tim. All right, so it's this Sunday. That's coming up. Make sure you do it. And then last but not least,
We got a packing
what's
party
this?
for the city. Okay, so
What
Tim,
is this,
I got to
Bob?
tell you,
I never
Tim,
heard of this.
Tim put together a video that was Academy Award winning on Sunday. It
It
had
was fun.
people clapping and laughing.
Wait.
and-
We should stick it here.
It was
We
fun.
can't. We can't.
Okay, so
We
it'll
can't?
play after
No.
this to cap off the thing. But so
Sorry, Pastor Dave. There's a copyright issue that will happen if there's because of the
That
song.
was a
gets
hard
played.
no.
Come on,
That was right
just,
up
you know,
there
just
with
mute it. I don't know.
like
I don't
sorry.
know, Tim.
Jacob Harold gave me a no that was less harsh than
No.
that no.
I don't want to get us
Can
in
I
trouble with the
explain
law.
what it is? I didn't
yes,
explain
yes,
it
explain
yet.
it. Explain
Then
it.
we can debate the video. Okay, so anyway, we're not doing the Winter Village this year. We're doing the Contend Conference in January, which, by the way, you should go sign up for and sign up to volunteer. We need you for that. We're looking to sell out before the end of the year, and the price goes up on January 31st. See how I wove? I did the weave, right? The weave right there.
Oh, don't look at this
Okay,
date.
I'll
It's
do
still wrong.
Weave. Can we get the right graphic for this?
Sorry.
January 31st to February 2nd, sign up for the Content Conference. In lieu of Winter Village, we are doing a new exciting event. We're going to be supporting City Relief, one of our local ministries, along with First Choice is a local ministry as well. And we are going to be packing hygiene kits for them. So if you want to donate to help us exceed 200 hygiene kits to send out to the folks on the streets in New York and New York City, we would love to have you not only help us get the kits, but also put them together. So this is going to be a big packing event. We're going to have breakfast. If you're somebody who has little kids, they can't go out on the bus, so this is a way for you to talk to them about. Why was that funny?
I remember part of the video was you saying bring them because they kick on the bus. I don't think that made the final cut.
That one. Bring them because I can't go on the bus.
If you want to get connected with City Relief, they can't serve on the street, but you can go pack the kids to send out. Anyway, so it's a family event. Bring your kids. That's the point. And then the City Relief folks will also come to talk about the ministry. So,
It's
and
gonna be a
Pastor
good
Dave might be
Saturday.
there. Maybe there'll be kids. Maybe there won't be kids. But
Let's
it's going to
do
be a
it.
great event, packing event.
All right. Hey, thank you guys
Yeah.
for watching the podcast today. I think we're good here, Tim, right? Yeah? Did I miss any
I don't
announcements?
know. We feel like we're
I
missing
think
something.
I think we're good.
All
here.
right. Hey, thank you guys for watching the show today. Aimee, thanks
And
for being
here's-
with us.
Thank you for having
Carving
me.
out
you.
time
It
in
was
your
fun.
day. Happy Veterans Day to those who served, and we appreciate you. We will see you next time.
And here is
on
not
Behind
the
Pulpit.
City Relief video.
No, because we can't post it. Our sermon from our service from yesterday is already partially blocked on YouTube.
Oh, come
Because
on,
of that,
YouTube.
so.
We're going to get so many comments on YouTube because of this discussion today, so we'll
Oh, I can't wait.
We'll see.
Bring it on, Trump Bella. Have a good night.
Bring on the frogs.